So, what's up people and welcome to the Mission 89 discussion of Spy Family. So Mission 89 came out about a week ago, and as always I will leave a link to this mission that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, we'll go take a look at it before they pull this mission back. Okay, so Mission 89. So Mission 89 continues on with these stories that revolve around characters that are not the three main characters of this series, Lloyd, Yor, and Anya. And of course, in the last chapter, it revolved around Damien. And in this one, we go back to Yuri again. So because it's Yuri, you're kind of expecting it to be a really strange one. And this chapter does not disappoint. But for me, I found this chapter to be quite impactful, and once you get over the comedy with the typical personality that you see in Yuri, you know, his sitcom personality and all the comedy that goes along with it, you start noticing some very interesting points with regards to this chapter. Now, you've seen it before in previous chapters, but I think I noticed it with regards to this chapter even more. And the topic revolves around fanaticism. And of course, that is basically Yuri's personality, right? And although many people may have focused in on Yuri's fanaticism for Yor, or in this chapter, because there was an introduction of a new character named Chloe, there was probably this interest in the relationship that might be growing between Chloe and Yuri. But for me, the fanaticism really isn't with regards to Yor, although the same personality with regards to Yor is with regards to what I noticed with this chapter, which is his fanaticism for his country. And I found that Tatsuya Endo wrote this chapter quite well with regards to that. And this revolves around the fine line between loyalty and fanaticism. And the difficulty in understanding where to draw that line, right? Everybody always wants to be loyal, right? You want to be loyal to your company, or you want to be loyal to your family, or you want to be loyal to your country. But just how far does that go? And depending upon the situation that you deal with, there may be conflicts between what you might call your interpersonal morals versus the loyalty that you see. And at that point, which do you choose? Do you choose to go with your loyalty, or do you choose to go with your morality? And in the case of fanaticism, of course you choose to go with your loyalty. And in the case of Yuri, the reason I find this to be very interesting is because he goes to the extreme where you can see that although he may be a relatively moral person, all of that has been dropped once he gets into his fanatic nature. In this entire chapter, he is in full-blown fanatic nature, and so we see a very disturbing image of this character because he wants to continue to remain loyal to his country of Ostania. Now, this all revolves around the situation that happened in the previous arc with regards to Winston Wheeler. If you recall, in that arc, Yuri went up against Twilight, and he lost that battle, although he did injure Twilight, which I guess in the history of Ostania is the first time a Ostanian agent was able to injure Twilight. And so from Yuri's perspective, this was a major loss, and so this entire chapter starts out with him being extremely down. What we find out is that despite his emotional situation, he is physically an extremely resilient person, because we find out that even Truck-kun can't isekai this guy by running him over, right? He just gets hit and he still keeps on going. And so sorry, Konosuba, you're not going to have a new character come out in your world because this guy is still alive. But despite all that, of course, he is down because of the fact that he lost to Twilight. And what's interesting is we come back to the understanding of fanaticism and loyalty again. We understand from our perspective that he is a fanatic. Regardless of which side that you might believe in this story, he is a fanatic to his country. But from the country's perspective, he he is a hero. Because of his fanaticism, he was able to, for the first time, injure an enemy agent. And from this perspective, because Twilight is considered a terrorist, Yuri does become a hero. And that's what his boss tells him when he notices Yuri being so far down. And what we find out is that because of his fanaticism, he becomes the inspiration to his entire team, and they have this renewed energy to go out and find this evil terrorist named Twilight and finally bring him to justice, because a hero like Yuri has opened that opportunity. And so the entire Ostanian secret police is in search of anybody who might have an injured arm and see if that person may turn out to be Twilight. And in this story, they do find one person who seems to have a criminal background and has an injured arm. And so, of course, Yuri and his boss becomes very excited until they see who this person is. And they finally go, yeah, just keep on searching. And that's when we do get introduced to Chloe. And it is interesting that Tatsuya Endo introduces Chloe in this particular chapter, because all of these characters are from Ostania, which we think of as the enemy. But despite what the leadership may be doing, a lot of the people underneath in the Ostanian secret police turn out to be relatively decent people, and Chloe turns out to be the character of reason to Yuri's fanaticism. Now, overall, the secret police is probably a very, very vicious organization. And we do see this as it goes along because, as you can imagine, Yuri is considered a hero despite all of the things that he does, which may be considered questionable to the point of being immoral. And we do even see that in this particular chapter. And that's why I find this chapter to be very interesting, because he starts questioning this Bobby Bacco guy, despite him definitely not being Twilight. And of course, Bobby Bacco, being an activist, starts pushing back and insulting Yuri, which of course triggers Yuri because he's not really in a good mood right now. And I won't go over the actual conversation because it's actually a very long one, and if you want to see it, you should go read the chapter. But it ends up with Yuri saying, if you are really interested in resisting what is right, then we have the right to be able to force you to tell the truth. And in this particular chapter, he does go to the point of saying, if you actually think that you can resist our method of torture, then you are completely mistaken. And if you continue to believe that, I will be happy to show you why you are wrong. And so you can understand, his fanaticism is getting to a point where he feels that because he is doing it for the greater good of the country, then it must be okay, what people often call the necessary evil. And Yuri is such a fanatic that he feels that he has to become that character to be able to keep the order in the country. But from Chloe's perspective, she starts seeing him in a very uncomfortable light. And this continues to go on because, of course, eventually Bobby Bacco does disclose the hideout of his organization, and they go infiltrate. And unlike Chloe, who was following standard operating procedure of identifying where the hideout is and then calling for backup, Yuri just goes right in because he feels that he has to be more heroic, not because his ego is telling him so, but his fanaticism that if he doesn't become a hero, his country will falter. And so he goes in there single-handedly and starts beating everybody up. Yeah, the method and the way he beats people up is very disturbingly funny because every attack is referenced to Yor. But because of his fanaticism, he lets down his entire defense and goes full offense, and he almost gets killed if it wasn't for Chloe, who backs him up and takes out the person who was about to kill Yuri. And it's at that time when Yuri starts telling Chloe, will you get out of the way, that Chloe finally beats some sense into Yuri. Now, Chloe turns out to be an old friend, or at least a classmate of Yuri's when they were younger. And Chloe was actually older than Yuri, or is older than Yuri. But because of Yuri's fanaticism, once again, he was able to excel in his academia. So now we're starting to see a lot of what Astanya may see about Yuri versus what we see about Yuri. He is an excellent student. He is very confident. And he is very loyal to his country and the people that live in the country. And so from their perspective, he is a fantastic person based upon his character, right? Everything about him, his physical capability, his mental strength, his ability to succeed, those are the values that you often see society put as, oh, this must be a good person. But Tatsuya Endo is putting is that if fanaticism is what's driving it, then you start losing sight of what is considered character as, oh, I will be this person, successful at this and this and this and this, versus morals, which are what you value and how you treat others and yourself and how you act to feel what you are doing is right. And Chloe sees that to get further ahead, Yuri has lost all sense of value. And from her perspective, she feels disappointed with him because he has gone that far. Now, Yuri argues back. He has to do this because he is one of the only people who might be able to keep this country safe. If he doesn't, then he might let down the people of the country, and he especially will let down his sister. And at that point, Chloe counters back and says, if you die from the incident, do you think your sister will be happy? And so despite all the comical situation that's happening, there's some very serious topics that are put into the story. And you start understanding why Tatsuya Endo brought this character in. People keep on waiting and hoping that Yuri will become a much more loving and a much more down-to-earth character so that the people who are reading the manga or people who are watching the anime will feel more comfortable with him. Yes, please, Yuri, please change so that we can feel more comfortable with you. But that I don't think that was the purpose to which Tatsuya Endo brought Yuri in. The reason he brought Yuri into this story was to make people feel uncomfortable. Yuri is a patriot. And Yuri is the type that you might often consider putting on a pedestal as the positive role model for society. He is optimistic, he is confident, he has skills, he is smart, and he probably is well-to-do. But we get to see the inside of him. We get to see something that Anya typically will see by reading into his mind and understanding what drives that and how much he is willing to sacrifice of himself and the people around him to get to that objective. And so I find this to be very interesting. I think people are hoping Yuri will become better, but I don't know if Tatsuya Endo will do so. And of course, we saw the opposite of that when we saw Lloyd's perspective, where he was changing, and because he changed, he was no longer as effective an agent, and he almost lost the mission. And so then what does that mean to fanaticism? What does that mean to morals? If your morals get in the way of your objective and get everybody else, as well as yourself, killed, then should you drop your morals just to succeed in the overall objective that hopefully will come to the right? And I don't think Tatsuya Endo's trying to teach anybody this is the way it should be or that is the way it should be. He's just trying to open up situations where you can't always rely on a textbook situation. You can't assume that morals are going to be there, that everything is either black or white. This is about a country of one side versus another. And from their perspective, if they need to succeed in this confrontation, they may have to strip themselves of their morals. That's what war is, right? And in the case of Yuri, Tatsuya Endo, I feel, is showing a situation where Yuri says, I already know what the answer is. I have full confidence. I do know what I need to do. I am loyal. I am confident. I must be doing the right thing. And so I found this chapter to be very very interesting. It's not a chapter that's trying to teach you anything. It's just a chapter that's trying to show you something. And through Yuri, I think Tatsuya Endo is showing that fine line between loyalty and fanaticism. And whether you like Yuri or not, you start appreciating this understanding that in the situation that the story is in, between the West and the East, where there is a very high tension and very big stakes, sometimes morals may not be what will make you succeed, but at the same time, does the success justify becoming immoral? And that is a question that's left open by Tatsuya Endo, and I think each reader can interpret this situation. And so this chapter was a very good one. It kept it very hilarious, but the underlying story within there and the message within there was a very serious one. And I kind of appreciate Tatsuya Endo for always being able to go from the wholesome comic side back to the serious tension side. And that's probably one of the reasons why I like Spy Family so much. But in any case, that is my interpretation of Chapter 89 for Spy Family. If you have any comments with regards to what you felt about Chapter 89, I would greatly appreciate your comments. So thank you very much in advance. And until Chapter 90, happy manga reading. And as always, have a nice day, everyone.